Hello and welcome back to my channel, Mental Health with Melissa. Happy New Year to you all. It's been quite a while since I've gotten back into these LCSW test prep videos. I am so excited to be back to being able to break down these questions for you and some of this test prep information for you. If you're new here, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more content. I post new videos. Well, I'm going to be posting new videos. I'm going to try to do every Sunday because I have a lot going on right now. So sorry about that. I'm going to be decreasing the amount that I post just for now. I used to post every Sunday and Wednesday. I'm getting back into the routine of things. So I'm going to try to post at least once a week until I have more time to get back into it. I am a therapist with a private practice, and recently I was able to pass my dissertation defense. I was able to defend my dissertation. If you're interested in that process, in getting a PhD in psychology and everything that I went through, my last video was on that whole process. It was like a vlog style and steps to take if that's something that you're interested in or you just want to see and check out my journey. It was very challenging, and that's why I had to take a little bit of a hiatus from YouTube LCSW test prep, but I'm back. And before we get into the material today, I want to remind you of the LCSW test prep program I have entitled Social Work Study with Melissa. It's linked down below in the description box if you're interested in it, and it is a full study guide for you. If you found my videos helpful or my teaching style helpful, you can go to that website and see exactly all that's included. It has a complete 170 question mock exam that is supposed to be a mock of the exam, obviously, and it focuses all on the different areas that you need to know for the actual test. So without further ado, let's get into the content of this video. I'm really excited to start back up. And we're actually going to start with 3 free LCSW test prep questions with full vignettes. I'm going to really just get into it, and we're going to break down these questions. So the first question that we're going to look at, how I normally do these videos, is I encourage you to pause first, to read the vignette, choose the option that you believe is the correct answer, and then play after you do that to compare your answers to me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to read this and then break down the information. So I always say that the answer is in the question, so make sure you break down these vignettes. A client that a clinical therapist has been meeting with for 8 sessions to treat generalized anxiety shares with the therapist that she feels that her obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors are making it very hard for her to manage her anxiety. The client and therapist have a very good rapport, and the client has been able to process parts of her anxiety. However, the therapist is not familiar with treating OCD or OCD testing. So this therapist does not know how to treat or even test for OCD when it sounds like obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. 2 very pertinent parts of OCD are coming up. The client expresses desire to stay with the therapist, but the therapist realizes symptoms are not improving due to likelihood of the OCD not being treated. What is the best response from the therapist? I got some comments from some of my videos way back when on those best, most, first questions, and people wanting more of these sorts of questions in like test prep videos. So that's why I chose this question first, because I really want to get your like analytical and clinical skills brain going to assess these particular sorts of questions. So with the best, most, first questions, what this means is that several of the responses could be answers. So we want to break down which one of them takes priority out of all of the ones that could be potential answers. So let's get into the options and take a look at them. Option A, continue treating the client for generalized anxiety only. Okay, well, if we do this, then we've already noted that throughout the past 8 sessions, the client and the therapist, they have great rapport, but her anxiety seems to be more of a result of some of the obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. So it doesn't seem like continuing to do the same thing will help. So because of that, we're going to cross that out. Option B, receive consultation from an OCD specialist and treat the client. Now, what we know about our ethics and our guiding principles in social work is that we need to have competence, and this would not be fair to the client because there are specific psychological testing screenings that you have to receive very specific training and certification on. I learned about these trainings actually as I was going through my PhD program, and you have to have a lot of experience conducting the testing and have a very specialized sort of background in treating OCD. So just receiving consultation from somebody is not going to set this client up for the best. We want to make sure that the client is getting treatment from somebody that knows what they're doing. So because of that, that would not be the correct answer. Option C, allow client to process fears of referral to a specialist and discuss limitations to current generalized anxiety therapy. I like this option because we're first allowing the client to check in with where they're at. If we're talking about termination from therapy sometimes, and there's great rapport, clients may be ambivalent to wanting to terminate from therapy, even if all their goals have been completed. But it wouldn't be fair to continue it if you're just having, conversations about how the weather is, or, just checking in about like how life has been, like two friends would. There has to be things that you're working towards. And so in that sort of situation, you would allow and want the client to process their fears of termination. The same thing goes in this particular scenario. And I like the discussing limitations to what this therapist can do, because we don't do it all. We have certain areas of expertise, and that's important to let the client know. So let's look at the last option just to rule out here. Option D, reach out to an OCD specialist that does OCD testing, consult with them, and refer the client to that specialist prior to discussing with client. I like reaching out to an OCD specialist that does OCD testing. I like consulting with them and referring the client. That's important too. Where this goes wrong is not discussing it with the client first. Of course, we first want to protect the privacy of the client, and we need the informed consent first from the client. So for that reason, option D is not a strong enough answer, and our option or our answer for this particular question is going to be option C. Again, because we want to first kind of check in with where the client's at, how they're feeling, and then discuss the limitations. Okay, let's get into the next question. The next question, again, pause here and choose the answer and then check back in. A client is referred to a therapist for depressive symptoms. Upon intake, the client reports that they were recently discharged from an inpatient psych unit, but don't know why they were admitted in the first place. Upon further assessment, the therapist learns that the client was discharged from the hospital with a prescription for risperidol. The client is likely diagnosed with, so this question is purely a know your medications definition question. So that means you need to know your psychotropic medications, because that is what these sorts of questions look like. The client is likely diagnosed with, so even though the client is referred to a therapist for depressive symptoms, because the client may be reporting sadness, hopelessness, the client still doesn't exactly know, or maybe doesn't want to share why they were admitted. And we know that they were treated for risperidol. So if we know that they were working with somebody in the hospital and we're diagnosed with risperidol, what does risperidol treat? Does it treat depressive disorders, psychotic disorders, anxiety, or substance? Again, this is just a know your medications sort of question. So risperidol is an antipsychotic, and schizophrenia is one of the diagnoses that risperidol can treat. So for that reason, option B is your answer. Risperidol does not usually treat MDD, generalized anxiety disorder, or substance dependence, unless there's like some sort of psychosis induced here. But this is a pretty general sort of, what do you think it treats? So for that reason, it would be B. Okay, our last free question for this particular 3 LCSW test prep free questions is this last one. So pause, pick your answer, and then check back in. A social worker at a family adoption starts working with a 4-year-old who is to be placed with a foster family. Okay, the child is very quiet, fearful of the social worker, and has reported extreme stress and fear with 2 other foster families. The child has a history of neglect from biological parents. The diagnosis is likely. Okay, let's go through all of these. So, reactive attachment disorder. These are all going to be diagnoses from the DSM-5. So this question is strictly knowing criteria for specific DSM-5 diagnoses. So this is diagnostic criteria that you should be studying. Again, all of this diagnostic criteria and these particular diagnoses are on my social work study test prep program with Melissa. Check it out in the description box down below. So option A, reactive attachment disorder. If we know what reactive attachment disorder is, we know that this is a diagnosis in which a child under the age of 5 has likely experienced either some sort of neglect or inconsistency with a caregiver, and as a result are extremely fearful or cautious about who they approach. They're kind of not really involved with like adults or wanting to know adults, and are very stressed out with other sorts of people or families. So this sounds very similar to what's going on here. Option B, disinhibited social engagement disorder. You can kind of think about this as the opposite. Sure, where the child has experienced maybe some neglect or maybe some inconsistencies with their caregiving, but instead of being fearful and not wanting to engage, it's the opposite, where they're like overly engaged with strangers. They're like, crawling all over like a stranger's lap. If the stranger's sitting like in the mall and the kid gets lost, will just feel like there's no sort of boundaries. So that doesn't sound like what's going on here. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So we know, again, if we have been studying up on material for diagnostic criteria, that ADHD is more of a sort of condition where it may be harder for somebody to keep their attention on certain things because there's such a level of distractibility going on, and that's not what the vignette is describing. Conduct disorder, and where there's a clear lack of disregard and vandalism and violence towards any sort of authority for young kids. So that's not what's going on here. So for that reason, by the process of elimination, reactive attachment disorder is going to be the correct answer. I hope that you enjoyed this first LCSW test prep video of 2023 on my channel. I'm really excited to continue doing these types of videos for you. So make sure that you comment and subscribe. And until next time, managing mental health matters.